call Julianne Genter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow, Auckland Council will vote on the 3-year transport budget that they will be adopting. While the proposal involves a significant increase to funding in rail, busway, public transport, all the stuff that Aucklanders have been asking for, unfortunately, it has to be funded through rates rises because this national government is failing Auckland and not putting the transport budget into the projects that Aucklanders really need and want. Last week, my colleague Denise Roach, our Auckland issue spokesperson, asked the Minister of Transport, Simon Bridges, questions about transport funding and investment in Auckland. And I have to set the record straight because, surprisingly, Minister Bridges got quite a few things wrong. Firstly, he said that the national government had spent $1.6 billion on rail in Auckland, more than the Green Party had ever spent. I'm not sure if the minister realizes that the Green Party has not yet been part of a formal coalition in a government, and therefore, while we could have perhaps dipped into our parliamentary office budgets to try and fund transport infrastructure in Auckland, it wouldn't have paid for much, and it really is the responsibility of the parties in government to spend the transport budget. That $1.6 billion he is referring to, of course, was not the initiative or idea of this national government. It is funding that was entirely committed under the previous Labour government. In 2007, $1.1 billion was committed to Project DART, and $500 million to the electrification of Auckland's rail network, largely thanks to the Green Party putting pressure on the Labour government at the time. So despite not being in government, the Greens were instrumental in getting $500 million of investment in Auckland Rail. Of course, once National came into power, that $500 million turned into a loan. So rather than actually paying for Auckland's rail infrastructure, they're actually forcing Auckland ratepayers to pay it back while they do pay for rail upgrades in Wellington. So this national government has not committed a single dollar, to my knowledge, to new passenger rail infrastructure in Auckland since coming to power in 2008. And this is despite phenomenal growth in the rail network. We saw 20% patronage growth in the past year. We are now on track to hit the government's arbitrary target of 20 million rail passengers by 2017. That is 3 years earlier than the Prime Minister's threshold for bringing funding for the CRL forward and actually starting it on time. Of course, that project needed to be started yesterday because it's going to have to be open by 2017 to meet the needs of Aucklanders. At the rate we're going now, we'll be lucky if it's open by 2021 or 2022, but that's only if the National Party actually sees the light and commits some funding to this essential project. Mr. Bridges also claimed that 99% of people commute on the roads. Now, I think he probably does know that it's closer to 80% who commute by car. But of course, in central Auckland, less than half of people commute by car. And that's because they have options. When you provide high-quality, affordable public transport options, people use them, and they would like to have more. This is what Aucklanders want. It says right here, Aucklanders want much more spending on buses, on cycling, on public transport, and on rail. You know how many more want more spending on state highways? Very few, because they know that when you make it easier for people to take public transport, you free up the roads for those who need to use them. So this is the capital investment to set the record straight. So we've had 8 years. We're finally seeing progress in Auckland Rail, thanks to the commitments made by the previous Labour government, thanks to the pressure by the Greens. But we're going to hit a wall because there's been no investment over the past 8 years. All of those projects are coming to completion and no new projects are yet in place because of the failure of this national party and government to invest in Auckland. So this is the government's transport plan for the next 10 years. This is their new capital expenditure. This much is on state highways that carry a tiny proportion of traffic volumes, and this much is on public transport infrastructure. Will that make it easier for Auckland families to get to work? No. They're spending $1 billion to fast-track Puhoi to Wellsford, which will be used by less than 1% of Auckland commuters. I asked the National Party to get some perspective, get into the 21st century, start investing in the modes that are missing in Auckland, that Aucklanders desperately want, that will make it more affordable to get to work, to get to school, and will actually do more to reduce the pressure on the roads than anything they're planning to do. The Green Party would do that. We have a costed plan.